Did you know that in California we have fair campaign practices? So in California's elections code, there's a series of rules for fair campaign practices to be conducted in this state. And these fair campaign practices are contained in Division 20, Chapter 5, and Article 1 of the California Elections Code. Article 1 deals with general intent, and Section 20400 declares that the legislative purpose of Chapter 5 is to encourage every candidate for public office in this state to subscribe to the Code of Fair Campaign Practices. It's also the intent of the legislature that every candidate for public office in this state who subscribes to the Code of Fair Campaign Practices will follow the basic principles of decency, honesty, and fair play in order that after vigorously contested but fairly conducted campaigns, the citizens of California may exercise their constitutional right to vote, free from dishonest and unethical practices, which tend to prevent the full and free expression of the will of the voters of this state. In addition, the legislature's purpose in creating the Code of Fair Campaign Practices is to give voters guidelines in determining fair play and to encourage candidates to discuss issues instead of untruths or distortions. Article 2 provides a definition of the word code for Chapter 5. Article 3 contains the Code of Fair Campaign Practices. And Section 20440 states that at the time an individual is issued his or her declaration of candidacy, nomination papers, or any other paper evidencing an intention to be a candidate for public office in this state, the elections official is required to give the individual a blank form of the code and a copy of this whole chapter. In addition, the elections official is required to inform each candidate for public office that subscription to this code is voluntary. The text of the code includes the title Code of Fair Campaign Practices and says that there are basic principles of decency, honesty, and fair play, which every candidate for public office in the state of California has a moral obligation to observe and uphold in order that after vigorously contested but fairly conducted campaigns, our citizens may exercise their constitutional right to a free and untrammeled choice, and the will of the people may be fully and clearly expressed on the issues. And therefore, it says that number one, I shall conduct my campaign openly and publicly. I shall not use or permit the use of character defamation. I shall not use or permit an appeal to negative prejudice based upon a candidate's actual or perceived race, religion, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, physical disability, mental disability, medical condition, marital status, age, sexual orientation, sex, gender identity, or other characteristic. 4, I shall not use or permit any dishonest or unethical practices. 5, I shall not coerce election help or campaign contributions for myself. 6, I shall immediately and publicly repudiate support deriving from any individual or group that resorts to methods and tactics that I condemn. 7, I shall defend and uphold the right of every qualified American voter to full and equal participation in the electoral process. Elections Code Section 20441 requires the Secretary of State to print blank forms of this code, and the Secretary of State must supply the forms to the elections officials in quantities and at times requested by those elections officials. Section 20442 requires elections officials to accept at all times prior to the election all of the completed forms that are properly subscribed to by a candidate for public office. Section 20443 provides that every code subscribed to by a candidate for public office is a public record that's open for public inspection. And finally, Elections Code Section 20444 prohibits a candidate for public office from being required to subscribe to or endorse this code.